can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What's going on, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How you been?
Good. It's been a long time.
Can we all say it? Like, don't they do this? Anyone like a school teacher here? Little kids? Isn't there something like when you welcome somebody, like a new student or something like that, and everyone like on three says like, "Good morning, somebody." How does it go?
Anything you want to say, just welcome or yeah.
Can you lead it like all in unison to like Pierre? We're all going to say whatever a teacher would say to Pierre.
Okay, I'm gonna count to three, and on three you say you welcome here.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
Welcome Pierre. Yay. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that needs further explanation, but I'm not going to do any. Yeah, I might later, but yeah. So good to see you all. Welcome back. Yeah, it's you know, in these crazy times, it's I was just communicating with somebody this morning about trying to find joy somewhere in your life because it's super important. It was super important 3 years ago. And then we had a pandemic and have lost loved ones and continued to go through this crazy, suffering, difficult life. And if you were a negative, stressed out, angry, depressed, sad person before, then that has all just rolled downhill and is sitting right in your heart right now. More than it ever has before. So super important to figure out how do you find joy in your life. And I mean, that's like $1 million question, you know? Y'all seen City Slickers? Anybody? What does he tell you it is? One thing, right? I don't want to give away the movie. I like people to figure it out. But City Slickers has the answer for you in case you wanted to know the secret to life. It's just one thing. So, you know, if you like Billy Crystal and you want to watch a 2-hour cute, funny movie about a bunch of, they're probably in their 40s or something like that, right? Midlife crisis, trying to solve all their problems on one little trip to, I forget where they go. Say again?
Like a dude
To a dude ranch, you know? So it's like 3 or 4, is it all dudes?
Yeah, one woman.
One woman, okay. And they try to figure out the meaning of life at a dude ranch. So if you don't leave here this morning having answered that question, you know, and your day isn't packed with tons of stuff to do and you are going to sit in front of Netflix or Hulu anyways, try to find City Slickers because they'll tell you the one thing you need to know for the rest of your life. For me at this moment, it was just welcoming back Pierre. So I got enough joy to at least get through the next couple of weeks, you know? So, but joy is super important. To all our virtual millions of followers, good morning and welcome. Thanks for being here. Feel free to chime in, introduce yourself, say hello, connect with others online. You know, it's one of the heart of Buddhist teachings. You know, the first thing he says is life is filled with suffering, which is true. I think we all kind of relate to that. Most people figured that much out, otherwise they wouldn't have shown up here. But he also talked about other things, and sympathetic joy is one of them. And finding joy in your life is my suggestion to kind of wrap up this thought is not to see it as a goal. You know, the Buddhist teachings say that the joy is not outside of you. You know, I mean, I kind of ruined that by telling you to go watch City Slickers, but the joy is really inside of you. And in Buddhist teachings, is really talking about finding what is stopping the joy that is already within us. We call this bodhicitta or Buddha nature. What is that awakened being that's already within us? What is that joy and happiness that's already there? Everyone in this room at some point in their life has felt joy. So it's already there. You already know it. You already have it. The practice is to focus on what is keeping that joy from shining, what is blocking that sun. And the metaphor in Buddhism is it's the clouds. And then we look at, okay, well, what are these clouds? And that's the greed and the anger and the ignorance and the pride and the ego, all of which I'm sure none of you have. But in case you do, those are the things that we work to part and allow that joy to arise that's already there. So, and the beautiful thing about this is it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything special to find it. It's right there. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start a meditation practice. For those who are maybe new for the first time, welcome. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Legs, one in front of the other, is typically more comfortable. If you have them crossed, they'll fall asleep even quicker than they normally will. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, also trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on a couch at home, try to stay awake. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything from this practice. Your mind will not shut off. It will not stop racing. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach, or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond every other 20-minute period of your life. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix that. It's going to help you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then make changes in your life. Meditation is waking up to the present moment as it is. And very often that present moment is incredibly happy and filled with joy. And very often that present moment is sad and filled with anger. But whatever our perception of the present moment is, doesn't change the reality of the present moment. So we have an opportunity to observe what's happening and not allow ourselves to be so emotionally wrapped up and attached to every little thing that occurs. But it takes time. It is simply a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's a way of life. And it starts with getting to know your own karma, which is your own thoughts, your own words, and your own actions. Karma literally means action. It's not what you get. It's not what you deserve. It's not what they deserve. It's not, well, look at them. They're going to get their karma. I'm sure none of you would ever wish that upon anyone else anyways, but just in case. Karma is not what you get. It's what you give. And the Buddha taught very clearly, we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind, thoughts, words, and actions. So the practice is to begin to recognize, what do we think all day? What do we say all day? And then what do we do all day? This creates your reality. And believe me, I know it's a lot easier to just point fingers and blame everybody else for all the messes. I did that long enough. And then the practice is recognizing, wait a minute, maybe we have some role in all of that. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets a little bit simpler. But again, it takes time. So be patient with yourself above all else. You're doing the best you can with what you got, and all the crazy life experiences you've had have not been easy or pleasant. So don't be so hard on yourselves. Some reason we read some Buddhist book by Pema Chodron or the Dalai Lama, and all of a sudden we think we're just supposed to instantly become this perfectly peaceful, pleasant person. And then we read 2 books and we think, well, if I can't do it, the problem it's got to be my fault. And then we give up. It's a practice. And every day we have tremendous opportunity to be kinder, gentler to ourselves and everybody else. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind or you're sitting with. And we use the rest of our time this morning, and I'll respond to your thoughts, your questions. And same thing for those joining virtually. Again, welcome. If you jumped on late, there's a chat box there. Feel free to say hello. And if you have any questions, you can put them in there and I'll do my best to respond as well. So thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about what we repeat after you. I take refuge in.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on what you're saying?
Yeah. So the question was, talk to you a little bit about what you repeat after me on the I take refuge thoughts. What are my thoughts on all that? So without you knowing it, I have just signed you up for the dark side. So it's great. I've led military groups for about 15 years, and it's a very well-trained environment, as is the monastery, as is prison. These are all very well-trained environments. I spent a lot of time in all 3. Prison, always able to walk out. So let me just clarify that. But discipline is really prevalent in these 3 environments. Different levels of it for different reasons, safety, health, things like that, but a lot of similarities between these environments. And so the reason I bring this up is down at MCRD, you have the Marines, the recruits. And so we start with, repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And then I said, you can all put the palms down, and they all recite it back. You can all put the palms down. And it was just, I realized at that moment, like, wow, people actually listen to you, But what we're doing in that moment, right, is in Buddhism what we call the triple gem. We're taking refuge in the triple gem, okay? Now, I recognize, I'll say this first, that for many people, I'm facing that way, so I don't know if your palms are joined or not. Maybe you're giving me the middle finger, maybe you're asleep. It doesn't matter to me. I'll talk about what they are in a minute. And I also recognize that when we repeat them, if we repeat them, some yes, some do, some don't, without someone like you asking this question, there's somebody else in there who has no idea what they just said. So I appreciate you asking the question. Hopefully it hasn't been sitting with you for 3 weeks and you finally said, okay, today I'm going to ask. Not just a week. All right. So for me, this is formal Buddhist practice for me. Doesn't mean it is for you, but it is for me. And so what I was trained, what I was taught is anytime you begin any sort of formal ritual Buddhist practice, you start with the triple gem in taking refuge. It's what you would start any kind of practice ceremony with. But then what are they is really the heart of your question. I just wanted to give a little background there. Let's first start with taking refuge. When you hear the word refuge, what does it mean to you? Anyone you can shout out. Safety, what else? Willingness, what else?
Place of comfort.
Comfort, you both said comfort. Anything else?
You're seeking something.
Say again.
You're seeking.
Seeking something, right? There's no real right or wrong answer, just to explore, like, what is refuge? You know, comfort, seeking something, safety, protection, willingness, right? The word refuge means different things to different people. But for me, as a practitioner, it's always been around the seeking safety, comfort, protection, right? And so when we take refuge, safety, comfort, protection in the triple gem, the first one is the Buddha. Now, it's important here to understand the Buddha died 2,500 years ago. So if you're taking refuge in him as a person and you're waiting for him to like show up and save you someday, you're going to be waiting a long time. He died, not coming back. So we're not finding safety, comfort, protection in him, right? It's not a God, not just a person who died at 80 years old, right? What we take refuge in is what's called bodhicitta. I referenced this earlier a little bit, but Buddha nature. In the idea that if the Buddha, who was human, just like us, assuming we're all human in this room, if he could awaken and figure out how to suffer less, so can we. That kind of that sun, that beautiful joy that is within all of us, we find safety, comfort, protection in knowing that we too can discover our own inner Buddha nature. I know it sounds misleading to take refuge in the Buddha, and then we're up here bowing to these things. And so it looks like we're looking at these people to save us and fix us and help us. You're on your own, folks. Okay? I mean, maybe that's good for you, maybe it's not, but that's the reality of it. Is we're on our own, but we have it inside us. And that's really beautiful. So that's taking refuge in the Buddha. The second one is the Dharma. Dharma really is defined two ways in Buddhism. Very simply, it's the teachings of the Buddha. So when he awakened, when they called him the Buddha, the awakened one at age 35, he then taught for 45 years before he died at 80. And everything he taught initially for 100 years was just memorized. It was then recited and written down 100 years later, give or take, on palm leaves. They weren't sitting there with their iPhones recording stuff. And so they wrote it down in what's called sutras. The word sutra means thread. So it's a thread of the original teachings that continued on. So we take refuge in the Dharma, which are the teachings. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, all these kind of key things that we talk about in Buddhism, we're finding safety, comfort, protection in all of that. The other way that you look at and hear about Dharma referred to as in Buddhism is ultimate truth. Not truth spoken by the Buddha, but ultimate truth, ultimate reality, which is beyond words. Meaning, anyone here ever been in an argument? Way too big of a smile right there, right? When you're the first one I saw, everybody else had the same smile, I'm sure. When you're in an argument, what's your name? Chris, when you're in an argument, Chris, do you think you're right? Yeah. Starts out that way, right? Even midway through, you're like, oh, wait, I'm wrong. But then you still argue just because we want to win the argument. But so you think you're right in an argument. What does the other person think? That they're right. That's the cause of all conflict in the world. Dharma is that there's an ultimate truth. But what Chris is wrapped up in, if I'm arguing with Chris, and what Jeff is wrapped up in, is their perception of that reality. Dharma, with the capital D, as they say, is ultimate reality, not our perception of it. And this is really important because we roam around all day long thinking we're right. I mean, how many of you roam around all day long thinking like, yeah, I'm wrong? I mean, it might happen once in a while with something, but for the most part, your entire day is like, this is my view, this is right. All of you just get out of my way, I'm right. And some of us more than others. God knows that was my path for 30 years, and that sucked for me and everybody else. But we spend our days thinking we are correct. And it's quite possible, I hate to break it to you, but it's quite possible that your perceptions might not be correct. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great late Buddhist Zen master, said that nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And what I take from that, and I'm still talking about capital D Dharma because it's super important. What I take from that lesson of Thich Nhat Hanh is that it's not that we are just going to all of a sudden abandon our views. As I'm speaking, for the most part, you're sitting there thinking, I agree, I disagree, I like that, I don't like that. You all have views on what I'm sitting here saying. What Thich Nhat Hanh is saying, to be free from all of those isn't necessarily the way I understand it, to abandon your views, but to possibly create a tiny bit of space for the fact that maybe your view isn't correct. And what that does is it allows your heart and mind to open and possibly listen to somebody else's views. I know that seems like a totally impossible idea. But if we listen to other people's views, no matter how wrong or disgusting they may be, and they're out there, but at least we can begin to understand them. Don't have to agree with them. Don't have to do what they do, right? But can we understand why they have their views? So this is kind of capital Dharma, right? So we take refuge in the teachings and ultimate reality, whatever that is beyond our perception. And the third one is the Sangha. At the time of the Buddha, the Sangha was the monks and then the nuns, right? And they gathered together to practice meditation, look at Buddhist teachings, things like that. In a modern day, fast forward to today, a Sangha is really a community of people that gather to meditate, practice together, explore Buddhist teachings, hold each other accountable, challenge each other, question each other, not always just pat you on the back, but, call you out on stuff. That's super important. So that's the triple gem. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Other questions?
So during my meditation, a lot of anger was coming up. So I was wondering if you could speak on forgiveness and wounds from people that have hurt us.
Yeah, for about 17 years, I could speak on that. I came into this path 19 years ago because I was filled with anger, and it destroyed me and everybody else around me. I share that only because I can deeply, intimately relate and connect with what you're talking about. We all are triggered with different experiences, different life experiences, different traumas, and our anger comes from different places. But there's something I found really beautiful that in a weird, twisted way, maybe, that those of us who are really angry, we know that feeling, and it sucks. It can drive us, it can motivate us, it can inspire us, but at the end of the day, it hurts. And then we take that hurt and we bring that to others. And it makes life very, very difficult. As far as forgiveness, the first thing that I think is important with this path and this practice is to forgive yourself. Because, and there are many reasons for that, but I'll just give you two very simple examples. One is that whatever has happened to us, whatever has occurred to us, whatever other people did to us, it's not our fault. And very often since childhood, we have been conditioned, convinced, even if that convincing was just our little childhood mind telling ourselves over and over again. And then one day we wake up and we're 40 years old and we're like, oh yeah, I've been listening to that child mind for 40 years that tells us this is my fault. That's a really hard thing to let go of and move past, right? But with time, with practice, with patience, we can begin to understand that nothing that's happened to us is our fault. People do really cruel things. And this ties into the second part of forgiveness, which is the compassion for others that have harmed us. Incredibly difficult to do. So I know every time I share this, I don't expect people to be like, okay, cool, got it, and then walk out of here and be like, okay, now I'm good. No, this is something that for years you continue to work on every single day. And it takes a lot of effort to work on this. But to know that in time, it can get better. And what I'm talking about is the compassion towards those that have hurt us. So what's your name? Sorry.
And
Anne. Have you, Anne, ever hurt somebody?
yeah,
Probably, yes. Okay. When you hurt someone, why did you do that? What were you feeling?
like I had been wrong.
And you felt what?
Felt slighted.
Slighted? So you're saying you only hurt somebody when they did something to you first? Sorry to call you out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the process. Remember when I talked about Sangha and challenging each other? That's what I'm talking about, right? So quite possibly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but quite possibly you had anger, you had sadness, you had hatred, you had whatever in you. And for no reason other than just how you were feeling, you lashed out on somebody, you did something to someone, and that hurt them. Is it fair to say that that's happened at least once in your life?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, what that means is you hurt somebody else because you were in pain. You were hurting. Regardless of the cause of that hurt, you were hurting. Compassion for others is to begin to understand that if we can understand that, there's that expression, hurt people. If we can understand that we hurt somebody else because we were hurting, we were lost, we were confused, we were depressed, we were angry, we were sad, whatever it is, then we begin to see that every person that did something to hurt us, that's where they're at. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't excuse it. But forgiveness, to me, really begins with the compassion and wisdom to understand that the only reason people are hurting others is because they're in tremendous pain. And what that does also is kind of a additional maybe way to see it, is that it makes it not about us. And therefore, if we are someone who feels that everything is our fault, the pain that we're carrying is our fault, it helps us realize that no, they're not hurting me because of me. They're hurting me because of them, because of who hurt them. And then that's coming out on me. But because I'm 7 and I don't understand any of that, I've now spent my whole life carrying that around. So there is hope. Right? I would say there's hope for all of us. You're not alone. There is hope. But does that help a little bit?
It does.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I could literally ramble on this for like 7 hours, and I'm not. I'm just that's a lot to take in right there. For all of us, just to kind of sit with that, because this question of pain and this question of forgiveness and this question of having compassion towards self and others is probably the reason 95% of the people show up to places like this. So, yeah, hope that helps. Yeah, Al.
Can it be that there are people who are just not nice? Or, yes, I've been hurt, but I don't go on a rooftop and shoot people.
Well, thank you for not doing that. We appreciate it.
It's just,
And we just put on a new roof and it's a little slippery. So if you do go on the roof, be careful. I love Al. I miss when you're not here for a few months. And as soon as your hand went up, I knew what you were going to ask. I'm just glad that you've been hurt and you don't do that. Some people don't have the skills, the coping mechanisms, the strength, the wisdom, the love, the support, the family, the guidance, the structure. They don't have that. I spent 5 years at the Monarch School. It's a school for homeless kids. A lot of you, I'm sure, know them. They're here in San Diego. I would do meditation every week. And I would go from a court school for high school kids to the Monarch, homeless kids, to an adult prison in the same day. And what I saw was that 10-year-old, homeless, been abused, used drugs, all that stuff. And then I see them at 50 and they're in prison. It's the same person. Regardless of whether they, to your question, can't they? Sure, they can. They could be hurt and not do those things. But most people don't have those skills. They grow up without any hope, without any love, without any affection, without any attention. They grow up being battered and abused and homeless. Those are not excuses. Those are the harsh realities of the world and societies that we live in. So for me, and I know this isn't directed towards you, Al, because I know you well enough to know this isn't what you mean, but I'm not going to judge or blame them for what they did. I'm going to say, and I understand exactly why they did what they did. Doesn't make it right, but I understand it. They don't see any other way. They don't have what a lot of us have, or what some of us in this room never had. We live in a very cruel, harsh world. Racism, sexism. I mean, so many social justice issues in our societies that are disgusting. And they're not right. But can we at least understand why people are doing these things? Because hating them for it won't fix it. It just adds more hate. I mean, these are the teachings of the Gandhis and the Dalai Lamas and the Thich Nhat Hanhs and the Mother Teresas. So, yeah.
Kind of on that, what would it look like to take some of that perspective whenever it is the case of folks who are causing harm from the place of power and privilege in society?
Yeah. Well, say that last part. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Yeah, if someone has the things they need, if they are in a place where they have been privileged throughout their lives and from a place of social clout or being white, right?
Yes.
They're able to do more harm. What does it look like to consider what compassion would be there?
To have compassion for them.
Yeah. Or
is that what I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm trying to get to if there's a question or a statement. So is your question, how do we have compassion for those who have all the privilege in the world and are using abusive power? Is that your question?
I guess the question is, I know that might be the goal, and also I wonder how is that helpful?
To have compassion for them?
Really the question.
Yeah. That's tough. As if everything I already said wasn't tough, I mean, I talk about privilege quite a bit. Every so often it comes up, usually once every month or something like that. Abuse of power. It exists in Buddhism as well, Buddhist teachers. I sit here with just about every privilege in the book, as a male, white, heterosexual, Jewish individual. I got all the able-bodied person. I have every privilege there is, and have every opportunity as an individual to abuse that power and that privilege. And so I think for me, it starts with recognizing what is my role in privilege and how can I use it to create change, and how can I abuse it to create harm? And there's a very fine line there. So when I see people in positions of privilege and positions of power absolutely abuse it, the response is, to me, ultimately the same as I was talking about earlier, which is, can I understand why they're doing it this way? Trying to think of a story from years ago that I'm not going to go there now. It'll take me too long to retell it. And I think if I retell it, it won't even be accurate. So I'm not going to go there. But it's very easy for us to say, pick and choose who we want to have compassion and loving kindness for. And the practice ultimately is not to differentiate and say, these people over here deserve our love and compassion and forgiveness, but not these people. The practice is to put it all together. And never be silent. You know, Buddhist practice, and this is for those who might be new, often gets this idea that it's this passive, I'm just going to sit there and let everybody do harmful things in the world. And I'm just going to be the Buddhist and sit back and watch. There's nothing that I've taken from Buddhist teachings that says that. Speak up. I mean, the Buddha was, to me, a huge activist. The dude walked around for 45 years teaching kindness, right? He's often referred to as a rebel in many ways because at a time where, which is no different today, but at a time 2,500 years ago where men and women were not equal at all, and women were not allowed to ordain and become nuns. And he initially said no, because that's what was in India at the time. He was then approached and said by one of his disciples, they said, don't women have the same ability and capacity to awaken as men do? They said, yeah. And then you have the start of the monastic order for nuns. Very rebellious, very much an activist, very much fought for what he believed. But I think maybe he did it in different ways than some of us might, do it. So I don't know if that addresses your question at all, but, at 12:04, I've tried to sum that up. It's tough. Yeah. I think the ones that, and I'll kind of close with this thought, I think the ones that, we all have people in our lives, whether we know them and their family and friends and we love them dearly, or they're complete strangers and we just see them on, TV, social media, or whatever. We all have people in our lives that they're just not okay to us. And we have this anger and hatred and rage and violence and thoughts about them, right? Think about that somewhat. What would it be like if your heart opened up to those people as well? Not to agree with them, not to support them, not to hope that they end up in positions of power, but to try to understand, why are they this way? Can we see that? Because I can tell you this much, the hatred or whatever it is that we have towards them ain't bothering them. Just us. So, and on that light note and topic, we will wrap up this morning. So good questions, thoughts, always fun to explore the nature of our own minds and why we do what we do. So we're going to join palms if you want. I'm going to close my eyes. So if your palms aren't joined, it's okay. We're going to do what's called a transfer of merit. And the idea with the transfer of merit is that we've accumulated a tremendous amount of merit in this beautiful act this morning, but this practice isn't really about us. We got all we need, so we're going to give it away. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and the family and friends that continue to suffer to this day. And the Venerable Master, Yizhe, during her time of rebirth, may all be at peace and free from suffering. May we be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you head out. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15, 16 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So thanks for showing up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different folks leading from a different Buddhist tradition. A few things out of the ordinary. Well, one more thing. We have a recovery song that's quite large. So anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever the addiction may be, that meets a few times a week. Also some virtual classes as well. We are no longer requiring an RSVP for the Tuesday night for the recovery song, but just for anyone who goes to that, just so you know, you can just show up. Also a day of silence, which was held this morning. It was really cool to have probably 15 people again this morning and finishing up downstairs. It's a 4-hour silent retreat. So if you're newer to practice and 20 minutes of silence is absolute torture for you, then I strongly suggest you do it for 4 hours. It's phenomenal. It also makes 20 minutes just seem like a breeze afterwards. But the wonderful thing about sitting in silence for 4 hours is you're sitting with the one person that causes all of the suffering in your life. And it's not the person you brought with you, it's yourself. So learn to sit with that for 4 hours. A couple things out of the ordinary that are just coming back. You know, it's really interesting. We were closed for 16 months, as most of you know, and we've been open now again, probably 9 straight months, which has been really beautiful. So at the end of each year, we always kind of look at what we're doing and changes and add some new things. And then we've always done that. But I feel like after being closed for, almost 2 years and building a virtual temple and like just trying to maintain, adding a few things seems like this massive eruption of all kinds of stuff going on. But it's the food redistribution program, which has been one of the greatest things we've done here for 13 years, is returning. We will do that on Thanksgiving morning to kind of kick it off. There'll be stuff on the website coming out. That'll be Thursday morning at 10 a.m. that we will gather with a max of 25 people downstairs in the dining area. We'll prepare all the food from 10 to about 11:30. For everybody else, you want to show up at 11:15 or 11:30, meet outside, and then we'll all go downtown and pass out food. Typically we get 75 to 100 people on Thanksgiving, and we definitely don't want 75 to 100 people downstairs in a little dining area. No offense, but we're trying to do our best to stay safe as possible. We're also on that day going to be giving out socks. A lot of people have been donating that through the Amazon wish list, or hand sanitizers as well. So socks, hand sanitizers, and like I said, food. So all that stuff will be on the website. Check that out. And then we will return for our weekly food redistribution every Thursday, 5 o'clock in January. So January 5th, I think, is the first Thursday, and that'll be back. So just show up Thursday, 5 o'clock, and we'll go back to prepping food and going downtown and feeding people. So we're really excited to have that back. There'll be some other things going on. We're talking about starting, if anyone's familiar with what's called Recovery Dharma. So we're talking about adding another recovery. Are you familiar with Recovery Dharma?
Yes. That's awesome.
So it's a good thing, yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yeah. So we're talking about adding that. Most likely to be Mondays at 7 o'clock. So we're looking at bringing that in for those who might be interested. But it'll just be another approach to tying Buddhism into recovery, which is what we do already. But this is a really beautiful program that's been around a while now. So we're looking at adding that. And then we're also, one last thing. I usually don't have this many announcements, but for years people always talk about we don't do much social stuff here. And I'm like, it's a temple, not like a party venue, And our food redistribution program, for those who've been involved for so long, it becomes a really beautiful social activity as well for people to kind of interact and mix and things like that. So we're going to start what we call a Sangha social kind of committee group, where we'll probably start maybe once a month, but we'll start planning outings, whether it's a visit to a temple or a monastery somewhere on a Saturday afternoon, whether it's going to a picnic at Balboa Park, whether it's going bowling. I mean, people have just been chiming in with different ideas. I put a picture on the Facebook page of like 2 monks on a roller coaster. So they're like screaming, yelling. And so it's just like, it's something that people have always needed, but post-pandemic, people need it even more. Just this opportunity to connect and be around other people who are also trying to make themselves happier and healthier. So we're going to start adding more of that in the new year. So other than that, appreciate you being here. Buddha for You is downstairs if you need anything. We always stick around if anybody wants to help sweep and clean up outside, or, there's a list by the door, stuff to help out with. But we don't have a cleaning crew. We are it. So we really do rely on all of you to help take care of the space. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you soon.